Let's go to Mike Gill. He's joining us now here on Birds 365. All right. What's going on, Mike? Welcome into the show, man. How you doing? We missed you the last couple of weeks, brother. First, let me ask you, how was the greatness of Thailand? I think all the people need a little bit of an update. Many were speculating that the Lady Boys had captured you. I didn't want to give any merit to it, but you tell me, Mike.
Man, that was so long ago, I can't even hardly remember. It was a wild 2.5 weeks. Let's just say that.
Yeah, you've been on the move.
Yeah,
I was in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Right, I was in New Orleans all week last week. I saw Johnny Mac there. What day was that? Friday, I guess. I saw you at the end.
Yeah.
At the end of the line there. No, Thailand was unbelievable. The Lady Boy thing, I think, is a little overrated. Maybe I just didn't notice. I don't know. I mean, I was with my girlfriend, so I'm not like the issue. I'm not checking out like ladies or Lady Boys, but no, we did it all, man. We squeezed as much into 2.5 weeks. We were hanging with the elephants. We were drinking with the monkeys. We were on the beach. We were at the train market, the floating market. You name it in that country, in the South anyway, we did it. And I recommend highly for anybody out there who's ever thought about it. It was not a lot of Americans there, though. We were like the only two. We couldn't find anybody that was from the States.
A lot of English people go there, right?
Very many Europe, a lot of Australian, Russian. A lot of Russian over there.
Really? All right.
Yep. Apparently, the people from Russia who were like against what's going on over there, they're all fleeing the country. But there's not many countries that will take you if you're from Russia. So they're going to like one of the few places that is willing to accept you, and that is Phuket, Thailand. So awesome place, unbelievable. The fact that I was there is still like you have to like pinch yourself to say, I spent 2.5 weeks in Southeast Asia, which like for some of these people is like a fait accompli. It's like us going to Florida for people in Europe. It's like their place to go to get away for a little while. But an amazing culture. It was awesome.
Floating market sounds fun.
What's that?
The floating market.
The floating market was a sight to be seen, man. You're in like this little, what are they? It's like a little canal, and the canal probably only fits like 10 boats, and yet there's like 20 of them all trying to fit down this canal. And the women have like they might have ice cream or necklaces that they made or a bracelet, and you just pull up to them on a boat and buy it from them. And you're negotiating on the boat, They hand you a calculator, and they're like, well, what do you want to pay for it? And it's like, how about this? And it's like, eh.
I'm not. I don't think I'd be. What is the standard? What is the money standard there? I don't even know. What's the?
It's called the Thai baht.
Okay.
Which if you
I
remember,
wouldn't be good. I'd be spending way too many Thai bahts.
Well, we were laughing all week because it's like Monopoly money. Like some of the bills are skinny, some are big, like they don't match. But the baht is, let's just say you can get a long way with the American dollar there. Like I have a picture of like our lunch bill, and it's like 140 baht, which is the equivalent of like $4. And we both had full meals, drinks, like, every single day. You can, like we were laughing, the Poison song, Unskinny Bop? The whole time I'm singing in my head, like, they're not charging enough baht. Like, we just kept buying everything because you're just like, how much is it? 140? 200? Okay. Like, yes, our dollar goes a long way in Thailand.
Good to know, Mike.
Maybe I should go to Thailand. All right. You're going to sell me.
Well, you hear like a lot of you hear a lot of like military people like from the States. They go there, they never come back. That's where I was getting all the information. I did watch both Eagles games there, by the way. I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. I got up at 3 o'clock. I watched the games without problem, thanks to the viewers that emailed and messaged me that gave me the information. American football, not very big over there, I will say that, but a couple of places, so yeah, it was an awesome trip.
And New Orleans. I went down that tangent, Mike. American football is not that popular in the rest of the world. People don't realize.
No, they had no clue what the heck it was. But that's like I went to London for the Phillies game. They had no clue there was a baseball game going on. This whole thing, like you're trying to put these games over there. It's more for Americans to take a trip than it is to educate these countries. if you think
Well,
Brazil,
there's certain sports like basketball is tremendously
yeah,
popular.
basketball works absolutely. Yeah. We met a lot of Australians, and I can't. They were like, we were talking about the Eagles game. Oh, I was like, I have to wake up tomorrow at 3:00. They're like, for what? I'm like, they didn't even know who Jordan Mailata was. Most of them. Like, I was like, oh, you know this guy Jordan Mailata? They were like, no, never heard of him.
Yeah, I think that surprises a lot of people. Just how, it's a very, very American sport, and people don't understand it. So it's very difficult. If you don't grow up with it, it's very difficult to understand.
It is,
football.
yeah, absolutely. One of the places we went, it was a guy from Australia owned the bar, and he said he had the game on at like, I don't know, 1:00 in the morning over there, and he said there was like nobody there, so he was kind of disappointed. He was hoping, because it was like the NFC Championship game or the AFC Championship game. I think was on at 6 in the morning. That's what it was. The AFC Championship game was on at 6 in the morning, so he opened up for it, and he said there was like 2 people there.
All right. Let's get back.
I was at Radio Row last week and had a lot of interesting stuff. New Orleans, by the way, should host the Super Bowl every year. That's number one.
Yeah, I kind of agree from a city standpoint, but they got to do something about the Superdome. The Superdome's ridiculous.
Okay, I've never been there, so I can't comment on that, but how it's centrally located for the West media, the East media, everybody can get there. It's easy. The city's small enough that you can get around.
Yeah, you can walk most places.
You can walk most places. The food is unbelievable. The convention center is humongous. That party that they threw.
The convention center it's just.
That's the place. Yes, I've been to. This is like my 7th or 8th now. You've probably been to more than me, but of all of them, that was far and away the most convenient and the best one that I had been to.
It's definitely convenient from the walking aspect and everything being centrally located, everything being together. But the Superdome is so antiquated.
Yeah, I haven't been to, so I can't, I can't kind of, but I'll take your word for it. I mean, it's obviously been there for 50 years. So.
And then when you see like SoFi or some of the newer stadiums, it's just like, oh, man.
SoFi, I mean, that's rare.
Hey, guess what?
Terrifying.
They had better turf than that field in Phoenix did.
Well, that's true, and that obviously came up because I mean that one we were talking about when he came on. To me, one of the most dominating performances I've ever seen defensively.
Yeah.
I threw that stat out, and I just found out this yesterday, so I'll throw it out to you. It was the first NFL game all season, Mike. Think about that. Think about all the bad teams, all the bad quarterbacks. The first NFL game this season where an offense did not run a single play in the opponent's territory for the first 9 drives.
It was an absolute, domination up front. I mean, that's where the game, we had talked all week, we had different guys on the show breaking it down. And one of the questions I asked is, where is there a matchup where the Eagles have such an advantage that it could result in the outcome of the game? And everybody almost answered Caliendo is the weak spot, and moving Tooney to left tackle would be a problem. And the 2 guys that wrecked the game were Milton Williams and Josh Sweat. And I kept commenting during the week last week, which was because Drew Rosenhaus was behind me all week last week. So I kept saying, look, Josh Sweat just switched to this guy right here. This is the game where you make more money. And the Eagles' 3 free agents said, I have a chance to make more money, and I'm going to take advantage of it. Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, and Zach Bond all had maybe their best. I mean, I know Bonds had better statistical days, but the impact that he had with that interception.
They all did splash plays, and they all got noticed on the biggest stage. And there's a lot of dumb teams that'll just pay you because you played well in the
Absolutely. And like, the Caliendo thing was a storyline for a lot of people that we had on the show, which was, well, look, that's where you need to go. And some people kept wondering, would the Eagles flip Jalen Carter over him to try to get him some snaps there? I don't know that ever happened because Carter really didn't have a big significant. Like if I said Jalen Carter was essentially silent in the game and you dominated them to that level, like you'd be like, no way.
You can make an argument that was Jalen Carter's worst game of the season. You can make an argument that was Saquon Barkley's least productive game of the season.
Yeah.
If I told you that going in, you'd say, oh, the Eagles are in trouble. And they were not only in trouble, they destroyed them.
Absolutely destroyed them. And listen, they destroyed them up front. And then, you take a look at what they did in the secondary too. I mean, they dusted off Avonte Maddox. I mean, it wasn't a huge play, but it's like the last gasp of air that you had before like you're done. And Avonte Maddox comes in and breaks down a 4th down pass, and you're thinking, where did he come from? The Eagles were just a step ahead. It's unbelievable to say this. As much criticism that Nick Sirianni unjustly gets throughout the course of the year, his team was not only the more prepared team, it was significantly more prepared than Andy Reid's team. Andy Reid's team looked like they just kind of woke up and showed up and said, hey, we're better than you. We're going to show up and play, and just had no preparation all week long. They had no answers for anything the Eagles threw at them on Sunday. I contest, everybody's like, well, this is the best Eagles team of all time. No arguments there. They're way at the top of that conversation. This has to be one of the most dominant performances for a Super Bowl champion. So where does that put them in the pantheon of Super Bowl winning teams?
Got to be up there.
Yeah, it's right up there. I always think about 55-10, the Montana 49ers, and then Seattle just completely obliterated.
Yeah, when you can remember the year or the score and like the 85 Bears, total domination. The 86 Giants, total domination. Those type of teams. I think 20 years from now, you're going to look back and say that 24 Eagles team was as dominant as any Super Bowl champion in history.
Yeah, and if you look at the couple losses, Mike, and I'm going to go ask you to recap. We've talked about this team every single week, and here we are at the end of it now, and they're Super Bowl champions. But you look at the 3 losses they had this year. I mean, the Falcons, Saquon Barkley, tough drop. I don't like to play revisionist history. I don't like to play coulda, woulda, shoulda, but that's the truth. You're one of your best players has a drop. You look at the Buccaneers game, easily the worst game of the year, but you were also without A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and an offensive lineman in that game. I want to say it was
Lane.
Lane.
Yeah.
Well done, John. Yeah, Lane. And then the Commanders game, you lost. Jalen Hurts was out the whole game. So you look back in hindsight right now, and you're like, geez, this team only lost really one game, and they were missing some key guys in that game. All the 3 games, that there was obviously issues in all of them. So it's really been a dominant year.
And when you look back, right, a dominant year, when you look back and I talk about the most dominant Super Bowl performances, some of those dominant performances that we've talked about, the Ravens beat a Kerry Collins-led Giants team. Hardly a memorable opponent. The Eagles beat a team with the best coach-quarterback combination potentially when it's all said and done in history. They were 15-2. They had back-to-back Super Bowl champions. They were the favorite in this game, and you dismantled that team. So you look at some of the dominant performances, 55-10, you mentioned that Bengals. I mean, you look back at some of those AFC teams, the Bengals, the Broncos, the Bills. They were good, solid AFC teams, but not like all-time greats that you this is an all-time great team that's going for a three-peat that you absolutely dismantled on Sunday. And that's something that I think needs to be stressed about how dominant this team was. And the only thing about it is it's interesting. I don't even know that they played their best game, right? Barkley gets bottled up. You mentioned
Well,
Carter.
They did defensively.
Well, as a unit defensively,
Yeah.
right. But you didn't get your best from your best player. I mean, imagine if he gets involved in the day and he's having a party and this thing gets really ugly. One of the things you take a look at with this team was all year long, they didn't have dominating performances like this. They kept leaving questions out there, like the passing game and what about the pass rush? That all got answered in the 2 biggest games of the year. So here's what I say for the Eagles fans, too, that's kind of tough to deal with. You might have just watched the greatest Eagles season of all time. I don't know that you're ever going to top that season. What do you do to top that? So
You better
next year, the year after, are you going to go 16-1? Are you going to go 15-2? Like, that's going to be a tough season to ever top. And you know how Eagles fans are just never happy. You're never going to be happier than you were.
I think there's a sense of I think there's got to be a sense moving forward of, you don't worry as much about how the regular season looks. You're now focused on what.
Oh boy, now we're getting into NBA territory, John. Now it's NBA territory.
I'm not saying that. I think look at the Chiefs.
Bobby.
Everybody around the league talked about how the Chiefs didn't look that good all year long. They're 17-1. They won all their games, and everybody in the Chiefs land's like, oh, we're going to win in the playoffs. They win in the playoffs every year. I think you have a team, Mike, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm eagle-colored glasses. I look at this team. I see Jalen Carter. I see Nolan Smith. I see young defensive backs that are contributing already in year one, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. You have C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship coming back. You go to the offensive side. Your average age on offense is 26, 27 years old with all of your playmakers there. I don't think it's crazy to say this team is in the best position in the NFL to try and continue this level. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to. Every season has its own personality, injuries, all of those things. I understand that. But if you're another team in the NFC, you're looking at the Eagles like that's the gold standard. How do we build our team to compete?
We got a gold standard quote.
You're not wrong. Listen, I said this the other day. Since Andy Reid got hired in what, 98, 99? 25 years, you have had expectations, save for maybe the first 2 seasons. You've had playoff / Super Bowl aspirations. I think the Eagles have had 5 losing seasons in 25 years. Think about that. This is a franchise that has given us 25 years of ultra competitive football, 2 Super Bowls, and then a couple Super Bowl appearances. So, yeah, it's not going to change, but this team, the things that you worry about, Mitchell, DeJean, Jalen Carter, it's a lot of young guys. How do they handle the success, okay? Well, you got all those Georgia guys. They had success in college, and they now have success in the pros. So you don't think that they're going to just let their guard down. But guys who win a Super Bowl that first year, can they get back up to that level? So there's a couple things, obviously they have free agent questions, but when you have Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie running the team, their standard is this is where we need to get to. And if you can't do it, we'll switch the roster over and get people that can do it. The organization has given Eagles fans 25 years worth of Super Bowl level teams. They don't always win it. They don't always get there. But you go into every season believing. This isn't Cleveland. This is in Cincinnati. It's not the Raiders. You don't hope you're going to make the playoffs. No, you hope you're going to win the Super Bowl. And I think that's what this team has kind of created. Now they jump to the next level, I think, of tiers of franchises.
Yep.
They're this team here that's kind of like in their own little box. You got Patriots for that run. The Chiefs kind of jumped up there. Then you have the old school historic teams like Pittsburgh and Dallas that always have, thoughts. Yeah. And now you might be in that next tier where you're with those teams that are looked at differently nationally.
Golden era is coming, Mike. Golden era is coming.
Well, I got to tell you, I had 2 flights home, 90% Eagles fans on both of them. They're already talking about Santa Clara next year already. So that's it. It's not bad to have good expectations. In fact, from an organizational standpoint, I think it's a very good thing to have higher expectations. Hold yourself up to a significant standard. I think the Eagles do. I think that's a positive. It's not always a positive with the fan base because they will shit on you quickly if you don't.
Well, they won the Super Bowl in 2017. They got booed the first drive the next year. It's always. I love what Jalen said the other day. It's always the beginning until the end. And that's it. We mock and laugh at the Cowboys fans who have won all these Super Bowls.
Yeah, Dak's saying they're close yesterday. He's getting mocked for that.
Well, I'm talking about for years, the Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl in over 30 years. So we always laugh and kind of mock the Cowboys fans about how they always go back to these Super Bowls from the 70s and the early 90s. Don't be that team that looks back. Keep looking forward. That's what Jalen's saying. That Super Bowl, celebrate it for the week. The parade comes, and then it's on to the next one because that one is, okay, we've already accomplished it because they won a Super Bowl on Sunday night. On Tuesday, the team was already different from the team that won on Sunday night when Kellen Moore walked out the door.
Yeah.
So your team is already different than the one that won that Super Bowl on Sunday.
What a great thing to hear from Dak Prescott, though, that he's in such delusion land. He's 2-5 in the playoff. He's been a 9-year NFL starter. He had 2 number 1 overall offenses, and he has 2 playoff wins. And Jalen Hurts has been to 2 Super Bowls and is 6-3 in the postseason. I mean, Is the Cowboys Super Bowl beating the Eagles once a year? I don't know. That's what it sounded like when I heard that.
And now,
thank you very much, Dak. Doesn't sound like you guys are focused on the right things.
And now you enter Washington into the mix. They've been down rotten for 20 years, save for a random season here and a random season there. I think that Washington team becomes your adversary now, where they are in the mix. So now you've got Dallas going after Philly, but also Washington. And if the Giants can find a quarterback somewhere in the line, you might get an AFC North type of situation where all three of the four teams kind of think they're playoffs. I think Cleveland, they made the playoffs last year. They just completely bottomed out. So all four teams in that division last year thought they had playoff rosters. So the NFC East is seemingly, Dallas had a lot of injury issues last year. We all know that. And they still were competitive. They had a couple weeks where they were a complete disaster. But once they kind of got back on the track, they played some competitive football down the stretch.
My thing is, I don't want to get on the Dak Prescott tangent, but what do fans expect him to say? Oh no, we're not even close to the. I mean,
yeah,
I don't understand the mentality. Like I remember when Alshon got here in 2017, and he told us all it was. I think it was between the Eagles and the Vikings to sign him, and he said he came here to win a Super Bowl. He thought they were close to the Super Bowl, and we looked at him like, what? What are you talking about? They're coming off, Doug almost got fired, one and done. They're coming off not the greatest season. Carson Wentz's first season as a starter. And all of a sudden, they win the Super Bowl. And you're looking at Alshon, and he's spiking the football afterwards, deservedly so. None of us saw that coming. I don't even know if he saw it coming. But it's just something you say as a player.
Yeah.
Well,
Did you see the article?
The problem is to identify. It doesn't sound like they think there's any problem there.
Bro, he was answering a question in some weird.
Well, to be fair, I think those guys. I think the Dallas guys look at their season and say, if Dak's not hurt, if this guy's not hurt, Parsons got hurt, they had some injuries on defense. Like, if we're healthy, we went, would they go 7-10 or I don't remember what their record.
Yeah, if they're healthy and things went right, they think they're a good team.
They think they're in the mix.
The good news for Eagles fans is the organization is a problem, and Jerry Jones is a problem.
But when 9 years, it's not just 1 year. 9 years.
But when you criticize a player for saying, I think we're close, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me because I don't want a player that doesn't think that way.
Yeah, and listen, why Dallas has had no playoff success. They've had 13-3 teams. I mean, this is a team that has just failed in the playoffs. Do we think they're just or is there what is I think Jalen is, just because you have it doesn't mean you can't, hey, can Dallas, and look, I don't want to go down the Dallas path, but I think if they get healthy, now I don't know what the coaching situation is going to be like. Schottenheimer's never been a coach before. Is that an upgrade for them? Did they take a step back
there?
Well,
that's positive. Like I said, the organization's an abject bastard.
Yeah. But did you see the article? I think Front Office Sports put it out, and they said, the Eagles have all this dead money and deferred. They're kicking.
Yeah, Jake Rosenberg was laughing.
And Jake Rosenberg is, but that's the thing is, Philadelphia, they have a lot of key decisions to make here with Williams and Sweat and Bond, those three, and then you've got Becton. I know a lot of people just feel like you take Becton out and you put Steen into that spot, and then you're kind of good. But Steen got Rochambeau'd for a couple plays on Sunday night. If you watch when Becton went out,
Becton went out that very first play, Mike. He got.
Although I will say Steen played pretty well. He played a lot here and there throughout games, and you never knew that he came in. So Becton, does a team throw money at him to play tackle maybe, or overpay him to play guard? I've already seen Jacksonville could be interested there. They need guard help there. But, okay, if you lose that quartet of players, which I don't know that you lose all four, do you take a step back? Do you already take that step back? You've got to get another offensive coordinator. Well, how does that change your offense? So it moves quick, man. 71 days until the draft. Free agency starts in a couple of weeks here. It moves quick. You're on to the next one.
Yeah, it moves very quickly, and I'm happy with that. To be honest, that's one of the positives of going late into a season. Because
and the Phillies report today. I mean, we do. You got the Eagles tapping off and saying "tag, you're it" to the Phillies pitchers and catchers today. So that's a.
When are you
perfect
going
scenario.
down, by the way?
We are slated to go March 19th to the 24th.
All right. And how much snow did you get?
We have a lot of snow. We have a lot of snow. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get to the office right now.
Yeah, it's bad. Typically, we get a little bit of a better hit, but it was worse on the eastern side of the I-95.
Well, mind you, I watched the Super Bowl in Clearwater. I was in the pool on Sunday.
Oh, that's
and
right.
now,
You were doing, yeah.
Yeah, I was.
Well, it was 75, 80 in New Orleans all week.
I know, but I'm saying I was in Thailand where it was 90. I was in New Orleans where it was like 80. And then I went to Tampa where it was like 80. And now I come home and there's snow all over the place. I was like, I'm out on this one. But I'm looking forward to seeing which guys, number one, would you prioritize, and which one will Howie prioritize, if any?
I think your point about Milton and Josh specifically playing well on the Super Bowl stage, boy, they made a lot of money. Because
who was the guy from Seattle? Malcolm Smith? Didn't he win like a Super Bowl
MVP?
I
mean, some of those old Cowboys, I always remember Dixon Edwards getting a big deal and Alvin Harper. And
Larry Brown.
Larry Brown getting a big deal. And they were just nice complimentary players, paid at the time like superstars, and they all kind of faltered.
Yeah.
Now, I think Milton's a really good player. There's a guy who I think bet on himself, and he's going to win, man. He's going to be a $20 million a year player.
Yeah, and that's the for people that remember that night, that's where Tom Donahue kind of gave Howie Roseman a cold shoulder and was like, that's not the guy that you should have taken. Now, McNeil turned out to be a pretty good player.
Really good.
I think both of them won there.
Yeah. But they both fit where they are.
Milton? $20 million has got to be heavy for Milton.
I think he's going to make $20 million.
Well, what about Bond? I mean,
Bond's who I want. Mike, that's
Bond is going to be. You have to understand the position. The position counts. Like, teams are willing to pay defensive tackles. Alim McNeil's at 23, 24.
Yeah, that's.
You're
crazy.
telling me Milton Williams is not going to get to 20 after that performance?
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it feels crazy that Milton's going to get paid.
My question is, are teams cognizant enough to know that Bond was as good as he was because he played here, or they say if he comes here, he could be as good as that?
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, he's going to be in the 15 range because of the position. It's
you paying 15 for a linebacker?
I am but Mike, hear me out. You got Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis on the offensive line or on the defensive line. You got your safeties locked up in Reed Blankenship and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You have two young rookie contributing corners in Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. You have every layer of the defense. Assuming your goal is to repeat what you did this year, knowing that's a lofty, tough goal to accomplish. The only area of that defense, remember, with the Nakobe Dean injury, I think it changes things too. Don't you want some stability there? I mean, is it coincidence that the first year we get an all-pro linebacker, we have the best defense in football by a wide margin?
When they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, T.J. Edwards wasn't an all-pro, but he was a Pro Bowl level guy, and it showed you what the defense was. Now, Oren Burks played pretty well. He's back next year. Do they know in the back of their minds, we really like Jeremiah Trotter. Nakobe Dean will be back. We can go with some sort of mix there. Save that. I don't know. I mean, yeah, Bond, you don't want to see leave. I'm not advocating for that. But as John mentioned, at some point, the price tag is too much where you have other areas. You got to find another edge rusher now because I'm sure Josh Sweat's probably going to leave. If you lose Milton Williams, okay, you got Moro Ojomo, Thomas Booker. Do they feel comfortable enough with those two guys where they don't have to re-put money into that position and that spot that maybe that opens up the pocketbook a little bit more for Bond? Gainwell, he's a free agent. They have Shipley, so they probably think that's okay. So it's all like a domino effect of what you have.
I think the top four is what you're talking about, which to me is Zach Bond, and I wrote about this on SI. I ranked Zach Bond
your article.
1, Milton number 2, Sweat number 3, and then Becton number 4. To me, you're keeping Bond, and you want to keep Milton. I think Sweat is going to leave, and I think Mackay is sort of like – there's so many interesting things about Mackay. Does somebody want to make him a left tackle again? If they do, you're probably screwed.
Yeah.
But he's got that knee, and
they might be screwed too.
Degenerative, and some people might not want to pay him because of the health concerns. So that might help you. I was just looking at, I'll tell you this. Spotrac does what they do with market value. They got Zach Bond's market value at 2 years, $20 million. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
That ain't true.
What did TJ Edwards get to go to Chicago? Do you remember?
He got
like $7-8 million.
All right, so then he would be higher than that.
Zach Bond's going to be way more than that. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But
my point is,
stupid teams though, and stupid organizations cost great organizations, because somebody's going to come in and say, "I'll give you $20 million, Zach," and Howie's going to be like, "Well, what the fuck? I'm not."
Well, that's my point though. Is $7 million they thought was too much for Edwards. Now I know you're saying, well, Bond was better than Edwards, but at the time Edwards had been clearly better than anything they had, and they thought 7 to 8 was too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then they have
Howie's already verbalized that he knows he needs to keep him.
Yeah, I agree.
And and Lynn McNeil got 4 years, $97 million, 24.25 a year. And I'm telling you, I don't think Milton's going to get that. But if he doesn't hit 20, I would be shocked. Yeah,
Milton Williams, not to mention, very rarely do you see a guy get to free agency in his mid-20s.
Yeah.
He's in that
everything's
spot
there.
Right.
Everything's there.
Yeah, you're not getting the guy on his second contract free agent. He's on his rookie deal, and he's ready to make some money here right now. And he had the game of his life when he had the opportunity to make that money. Milton Williams is lined up to get an overpay. And listen, Milton Williams, he's a guy that I've loved. Like every year, I'm like, if he gets more snaps, 1 year he had 8 sacks. And you're like, if he gets more snaps, can he get to 12? And they just never really used him like where he's able to get his profile up. But he was excellent this year. And then you saw him as the season went on. And then, of course, the Super Bowl. He's just a freak, man. And we heard her. Remember, he was the guy at the combine who had numbers comparable to Aaron Donald. They were like, the only other guy who's had numbers like this kid is Aaron Donald, and he just had played at a small school. He was a little undersized, like arm. This guy is a guy who can really make a lot of money. He'll be the one guy that I think that, I don't know if it's overpay or what, but he'll get paid probably the most out of those 3.
Yeah, I agree with that. And as I said, that's a position the NFL is willing to pay.
See, that's a gamble too, though. We can acknowledge that, right? I mean, Milton Williams has been great as a rotational piece.
Oh, it's definitely a gamble.
Next to an all-pro defensive tackle. I mean,
and you know what happens here, too?
Are you confident in Milton Williams being your starting DT at 50, 60, 70 snaps a game for 22? Well, Javon Hargrave got $20 million. He had a double-digit sack season. All right, Milton Williams was great this year. I like him a lot. I think he's been a great player for a third round
me, sacks. I don't. But I agree with you from the standpoint. Again, stupid organization.
That's the thing. You get a team that generally is not good, and they're saying we can get this guy. He can help us become good.
Right.
You get Jacksonville, or you get Vegas, or you get one of those teams that are just constantly grabbing. Then they overpay, and you're stuck in a horrible situation. And you're like, Milton Williams got paid $20 million, and what happened to him? You hope that doesn't happen to the kid, but hey, money talks, man. What did Josh Sweat right after the game?
This is, as Mike pointed out, this is exactly the guy you want to pay in free agency. Coming off the rookie deal, still young, hitting his stride, hasn't played a lot early in his career, so there's not a lot of wear off the tire. Now he's playing a lot, playing at a really high level. Exactly. I mean, he is the definition of what you want in free agency. The smart team should be lined up for Milton Williams, and I think the Eagles are lined up. If I pay Milton Williams $24 million a year, I don't even worry about it. I go to sleep. I don't even worry about it. This is exactly the guy you want to reward. Everybody else I have concerns over.
So the question would be, John, Zander, is there a way that Howie can bring back these guys and pay them what they want?
I think there's 2. You can get 2 tops. Becton is interesting because
Becton might get pushed down a little bit.
Becton seems to really like it here. I'm not saying these guys are going to make decisions and shave off millions of dollars of earnings to play here, but you've seen great organizations in the past have players want to play there. You're getting that vibe from some of these guys right now. Does Becton say, I was a first-round pick. I'm kind of set for life. I'd rather be in Philly with Jeff Stoutland, with this offensive line. I'll take a couple-year deal at $12, $14 million. I don't know. Maybe.
You don't see that often where a guy says, I like where I'm at. I'm cool making $5 to $7 million less. It's an interesting mindset.
It's not going to happen.
Right. It's an interesting mindset that none of us are really in that position where, you're offered, I guess.
We had, and I want to get into Kellen more with you. We had that discussion. It's like, whether you really want to go to a bad organization to be a head coach when you can stay here and win another Super Bowl. Yeah, you do. Nobody's staying here.
Well, that's where we can't relate. If somebody says to me, hey, you could make, I don't know, an extra, what would be the equivalent? Here, you could make an extra, $17,000, but you got to move to, I don't want to disparage any town in America.
We're in a different bracket here, Mike.
That's what I'm saying. I'm putting it into our terms. Here's an extra $17,000 to go here. Like for them, an extra $7 million, but I got to move to Cincinnati or I got to go to wherever. In my mind, I'm like, and maybe this is why I don't make enough money. I don't want to go someplace that I don't want to be just because I'm making more money.
Now, if you give me an extra $7 million, I'll go to Jonesboro, Arkansas. And I don't want to.
But if you were already making $5 million, do you really need?
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I hate doing this because I don't like to count pot. You never know what somebody's got in life, what they're dealing with, what their family situation. You don't know any of those things. So I try not to get into.
Maybe you really like your neighbor. Maybe he takes your trash out for you while you're
gone. Somebody pointed out in the chat, Devontae Smith took a pay cut. He didn't have to sign that contract.
He didn't.
He signed it early.
AJ
did for way under market value.
He didn't take a pay cut. What he did was he didn't maximize his earning potential. Now, there's plenty of players that do that. But I think what people don't understand, when Jalen Hurts or Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown or Landon Dickerson sign their contracts, they're at the top of the list.
Right.
Howie just knows the list is going way up. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, in a year or two, it'll look really good, and it does. That's the difference.
Two of the top 10 highest paid players on this team: James Bradbury, number 7, or Bryce Huff, number 7, and James Bradbury, number 10. They were two of the highest paid players on this team.
Boy, that Huff guy. I'm thinking Josh Sweat gets a Huff contract. What do you think? 3 years, $51 million. I think that's right.
He's gonna get 15, somewhere in that range, maybe even more. That's
why I said Huff. I think 17, 18 million is gonna be what he gets.
Yeah, he's now. There's some. He's a little bit older. Like he's not like Milton. He's got the knee thing, so that'll concern some people. Even though he's played pretty consistently, that should be. I know that upsets Josh, to be honest, but NFL teams are going to weigh it. So he probably deserves more just from the production standpoint, but I think that pushes him down a little bit. But Jake Rosenberg was not, Jake's kind of laughing at people. That front office sports thing is like, the Eagles are hoping 31 other teams think that way because, in a copycat league, nobody copies the right things. And that's spending money, kicking the can down the road from a cap standpoint, spending money because the cap's going up. Or another pandemic or something like that, the cap's going to continue.
One of my favorite conversations last week was with Thomas Dimitrov. What stories he had about dealing with Howie. Have you ever talked to Thomas?
Yeah. Thomas was going to do Birds 365 once, and when Jody was on, and he had all these restrictions, and we were like, "Come on, dude!"
Really?
He had all these restrictions because he didn't want to talk about Howie. He's good friends with Howie.
Yeah, well, he emptied the bag to us the other day. It was,
did he?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe stories that he's told before, but just like dealing with Howie, and he's like, listen, the guy would call, and I'm like, Howie, I'm not giving you a 2. Stop asking. He's like, he's known around the league for starting every phone call.
Yeah,
with
he's
that,
always
but
asking for a 2.
he said, he was talking about how you ever see the movie Draft Day where they're like, who's that new guy in Jacksonville? Get him on the phone. And he's like, that's Roseman. He knows the young guys that'll cave. Like he's just so good at like having the pulse on that.
Well,
kind of
Adam
stuff.
Peters did that this year. That when he was like, "Come on, Howie."
Yeah.
Well, and Adam did a good
trade. We've all seen the trade residual of the Carson Wentz deal. What the Eagles have gotten for Wentz, like it's almost like somebody should have said, "All right, this doesn't seem fair." You got A.J. Brown.
Well, that's where Howie's great. Howie's great with contingencies because he knows no matter what, not everything's going to work out. So he's really good with the pivot. And other people try to salvage and this and that. Howie's really good with the pivot and going in different directions. Because one of the things about the Jalen Hurts pick, we talk about it all the time on this show. That was not the plan. The plan was he was going to be Carson's backup. Maybe he got to play in the preseason.
But John, that was still a bold draft pick, dude. A second round pick. This isn't a 6th round pick as a cost-effective backup. Howie had to have balls to make that pick.
Well, what did Jeffrey say after the Super Bowl? We had to have him.
Yeah.
We had to have Jalen.
Are you telling me, John, a 2nd round pick when you just paid your starting? If Howie went into this draft and drafted a quarterback in the 2nd round, you're telling me that wouldn't be bold? That wouldn't
I will say.
Do you understand that created the problems that created?
Okay.
Like there's so much revision. Yeah, it was a bold move from the standpoint of you drafted a quarterback and it pissed off the quarterback that you wanted to pay, and you did.
You weeded out a guy who's soft.
Yeah, but that's bullshit. That's revision.
Bullshit. We don't have a Super Bowl today if he doesn't make that draft pick.
Oh my God! You weeded out. People talk themselves into fucking pretzels. I'm telling you what the plan was. The plan was to have a cost-effective backup and then spin them off for something down the line. That was the fucking plan. That was the plan. Now, people can lie to themselves all they want. Where Howie deserves credit is when the plan went off kilter because they didn't think about the impact it would have on a goofball who was weak-minded. That I agree with. Yeah. They didn't think about that. Then they pivoted and made the best of a bad situation. Well, that's where he deserves credit. Going all the way back to the original, that's complete bullshit.
Well, and I remember that was pick 53. The next day, I remember I'm on the air. Hunter Brody did the show with me at the time, and we were battling back and forth. And I had explained to him, I said, listen, the Eagles value the backup quarterback more than they do a starting safety. They just won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback, so they value that spot. You also have the mindset of, listen, there are other teams. Green Bay does this all the time. We have a quarterback. We're maybe not sure. We have a guy that can sit on the bench for 3 years. I'm not saying that was their mindset, but it's not crazy. Atlanta just drafted a quarterback in the 1st round after they signed a guy. Teams value the backup quarterback and having quarterbacks at their disposal more than a safety or a linebacker.
Well, the Eagles value the back, and that's one of the reasons why. There's a bunch of reasons. Jeffrey Lurie loved the player. They had a Russell Wilson vibe. They didn't want to wait to the 3rd round, risk losing him again. They always talk about Russell Wilson. There's a bunch of stuff that went into it, and I don't care. I tell this story all the time, and people think it's bullshit, and people think it's bull. I told the McCaffrey story for years. Then it comes out, and everybody knows it now. I'm telling you the story. I'm telling you what the fucking plan was. I'm not pulling it out of the air.
Yeah, but if you just said they thought he was Russell Wilson and they didn't want to pass on him, they obviously thought higher of him than
they thought very highly of him. You think very highly of any 2nd round pick. But I'm telling you what the fucking plan was. Right, the plan was for him to be a cost-effective backup to Carson Wentz, who they thought was a star quarterback. And we all thought was a star quarterback. It was a star quarterback for a very short amount of time. It created waves that shouldn't have been created if Carson was a little bit more thick.
How do you feel if you're Carson Wentz? You got usurped by Foles and had to watch that Super Bowl. And now you're standing on the other sideline by the guy who took your job as they win that Super Bowl. I contend the Eagles just need to bring Wentz back as the backup, so he's always on the sideline watching. You'll always win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I don't know why it bothers me. I mean, there's plenty of good with Howie Roseman. I'm the fucking guy. You know, Mike, you and I are probably the only guys. We used to get shit on constantly.
Yes. I took a lot of heat for my Roseman takes.
Yes.
There was a time where
Mike, you were the first person on this show calling him a top 5 GM years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
Listen, I have always been a Roseman fan, even when he took Rager over Jefferson. Yeah, it was a total mistake. But I said, Roseman, I've been doing the show for too long. He was the most hated figure in Philadelphia sports for a time, and there wasn't a number 2. He was that despised by people, and the number 2 guy wasn't close. Those people still won't come out and say, man, was I wrong. There are still people who kind of quietly think this team was great and don't want to give him the credit. For years, when they won that first Super Bowl, it was Joe Douglas that put that team together. It wasn't Howie. It was Joe Douglas. Well, now Joe Douglas is out looking for another job, and the Eagles have won another Super Bowl.
Yeah. You and I were ground floor, Mike Gill.
Oh, I said, listen, because in my mind, listen, the draft is a 50-50 proposition. You're going to make mistakes. Was that a glaring mistake? Absolutely. Did they make other bad mistakes? Absolutely. But 50-50 everywhere around the league. You took this guy, you could have took that guy. That happens. But I need my guy to make smart, calculated decisions in cap and in contracts. And all of that stuff is more important. Now, the draft is obviously important, but that's not an exact science. There's nobody that I could bring in here that's going to nail the draft year in and year out. I can't guarantee that. What I can guarantee is that Roseman's going to win the trade. He's going to win the contract. He's going to give the right deal. He's going to approach you at the right time. And those are where a team like Dallas, who drafts better, they're a very good drafting team. They just don't know when to approach. They don't know how to sign these guys. They don't know when to extend them. They don't know how much money to give them. They don't know how to manipulate the cap. Dallas has the talent. They don't have the organizational structure. Philadelphia, yes, they missed in the draft at times. He learned. And that's what I like about Jeffrey Lurie. He allowed Roseman to make mistakes and not be afraid to learn from them. Some of these guys get blown out the door because they make one mistake.
Talk about
and it's like, all the time. Come on.
Yeah. The patience is a big part of it. At Mike Gill show, make sure you follow Mike on.
Real quick, you mentioned Kellen Moore before. We didn't really get to him, but is Jeff Stoutland a possibility?
No, offensive coordinator. No.
Because do you think Petula goes to New Orleans or he stays here?
I think he stays here. I think he's going to be the offensive coordinator. Remember, if he stays here, he gets to call plays. If he goes to New Orleans, he doesn't get to call plays. But I think that's a big difference. But it's interesting the politics of that because Kellen became very close with him when he was here. Nick is tremendously close with him for years and years and years. And he wants to be a coordinator. So it's going to be interesting. He's got a big job here. I don't think people realize how big his job is as the associate head coach. He's been Nick's right-hand man for years since he got here. And maybe Nick wants to keep him in that position, but I think that's going to be very difficult to do. Now that you have somebody looking at him,
is it an outside the box thing or, the names, Frank Reich? I've had people text into my show, bring Doug back. I can't imagine Doug wants to come back and be the coordinator at a spot where he's got a statue. Although, Robert Saleh put his tail between his legs and went back to San Francisco. Vance Joseph was the head coach in Denver and went back there to be a coordinator.
Yeah,
so it has happened. But Doug won a Super Bowl, the first one that has a statue, to come back as a – and by the way, he's not a great play caller either. Frank Reich's name, Josh McCown's name is brought up to me. Mike McCoy worked with Nick in San Diego. So there's a couple – there's a couple names. There's a couple names that have been thrown my way by.
I like Josh McCown. I've advocated. I thought the Eagles should have hired Josh McCown right off the field back, and they were thinking about it.
Well, he interviewed for the Texans job twice and the Jets job a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a head coach in this league.
Do you want to get a guy who Do you want to go down the road of like the Vic Fangio and get a guy who's like, hey, I'm a coordinator, I know it? Or do you want to get a young guy who's going to be out the door again?
That's what Mike, I've been saying that all week.
Well, then, I don't like the dichotomy of, Nick considers Frank to be his mentor. I don't like the dichotomy of hiring your mentor to be your employee.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it wouldn't work.
No.
I mean, we thought the setup this year didn't work, and they're Super Bowl champions, so.
Well, I that's not true, because I didn't think the setup would work if they truly, cut the legs off Nick Sirianni. I thought that was the problem. They didn't cut the legs off Nick Sirianni. That's why the setup worked. The presumption was that Nick had power taken away. Nick didn't hire Kellen Moore. All this, Nick wouldn't have the power as the head coach, and he would have to defer to Kellen Moore. That type of setup would not have worked. The Eagles, to Jeffrey Lurie's credit, did not do that. So, and it did work.
Now, Frank Reich is a popular name, but there was a lot of confusion. Did he call plays? Did Doug call plays? And then when he left, and then the next year, people were like, Frank, it was all Frank. So that would be an interesting thing with Frank.
Yeah. Well, it's always funny because you point out, you mentioned Doug. Like, Frank didn't call plays here. I mean.
Right. Then he went to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And then he went to Carolina, and neither worked out very well.
Yeah, exactly.
Josh McCown was his quarterback coach in Carolina. They both got blown out. McCoy, he was interesting. He had some decent years with the Chargers, but he was a coordinator with Denver, Arizona, and that did not go well. Not talented teams, but he's been the quarterback coach with Peterson the last couple of years.
Yeah, and he was here the first year. He was here a lot, Mike McCoy, just at training camp and practice. So they're close. There's nobody. He's not closer to Nick than Kevin Petullo, though, with the exception of perhaps Shane Steichen. So, if Nick had his druthers, I think Kevin would have already been the offensive coordinator. And now that he's won the Super Bowl, I can't imagine they won't give him what he wants.
He'll probably bring Brian Johnson back.
Yeah, if you want to make him the coordinator.
There you go.
I think that would upset some people. Statistically, they had a better offense last year than this year, but I digress.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you
Brian Johnson will get his revenge as the offensive coordinator for Jaden Daniels in 2 years when Cliff gets a job.
Yeah, Cliff probably could have gotten a job this year.
He probably could have got the New Orleans job. He said no.
Yeah. So you're right.
We'll see what happens there. Mike, thanks for joining in, brother. We got BLG coming up. We got a roll, man. It's a late one, but we appreciate you joining in. It's great to have you back on the show, Mike. The great people of Birds 365 missed your appearances here, so we're looking forward to talking to you again each week. Great stuff, Mike, and we'll talk to you again next week, brother.
97.3 ESPN South Jersey, 2 to 6. Listen to Mike later today.
Thank you, Mike.
If you can get to the office.
Joining us here on Birds 365. Great job by Mike Gill. We have BLG coming up next. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Let me get to 2 super chats here before we get to BLG. All right. Leo Nard, we want to be known as a quarterback factory. That's what he says in quotes.
Yeah, that's one of the quotes.
Yeah, I do think it's a little interesting. How
every once in a while,
for the Jalen Hurts draft pick. I mean, I don't understand that.
There's so much fucking revision. It drives me
insane.
It's
not, John. There's an element to this that is what makes organizations go. Tom Brady was a 6th-round draft pick. He wasn't the fucking plan either. You don't get any credit for that?
No. All I'm asking you to acknowledge is it wasn't the plan. Yes. And a 6th-round pick worked out.
Not everything goes to plan. If everything went to plan in life, we'd be Super Bowl champions every fucking year. That's not how it works.
That's fine. I agree with you. Then don't pretend it was the plan. That's it.
I'm not pretending it was the plan. I'm saying it was one
afterwards. Zander, you can listen to yourself. You're saying
I will listen to myself. I said it was a great contingency plan and a bold draft.
Did not use the fucking word contingency. I used the word contingency.
John,
Howie's great at
was it a bold draft pick in the 2nd round?
It was a cost-effective quarterback pick in the 2nd round. Was it a bold pick? It was
All
a
right,
bold pick.
let's do something. Find me the last team that paid a quarterback a max contract and then drafted a cost-effective backup in the second round. Does it even exist ever in NFL history?
Okay, try to listen what I'm saying. You're moving the goalposts because you want to win this is a Jody argument. You want to win the argument so bad, you're just going to move it everywhere you want to move it.
No.
All I'm saying is try to listen to this. It was not the original plan. So Howie does not deserve credit for saying, I'm going to draft Jalen Hurts and say, this is going to be my Super Bowl winning quarterback in 2025. All I'm saying is that.
No credit for that.
The bullshit of the revision. Now, when things went off, and again, Howie deserves a lot of blame for things going off the rails because they didn't think about that. And then they recovered, to their credit, because once you make a mistake, the only thing you can do is fix it. And the only way you can fix it is to acknowledge the mistake. And by the way, I haven't even gotten to the point, and BLJ can come on the show and tell you yourself if you don't want to believe me. This team, after 2021, was trying to convince Deshaun Watson, trying to convince Russell Wilson to see if they wanted to come to Philadelphia. People ignore it. People don't believe it. It's utter bullshit. The fact that Jalen Hurts worked out is a testament to Jalen Hurts. It's a testament to his work ethic. It's a testament to a million different things. But that bullshit that it was the plan is complete bullshit. That's it. Now, move the goalpost wherever you want to go. It worked out. Howie deserves credit for the contingency. That's what he's the best at. That's what makes him the best in the business. Just don't go back to the draft pick. He wasn't drafted to be a superstar quarterback here. He was drafted to be a cost-effective backup and spin him off 3 years down the road. That's why he was
That's
drafted.
not what I disagree with you on. I disagree that Howie doesn't deserve any credit. I understand. I know Jalen was in. I have a tweet from a month ago talking about Jalen deserves the most credit for seizing the opportunity. But to say Howie didn't go out on a limb or that wasn't a good move by him.
Give Jeffrey credit for that because he's the one who fucking pushed for it.
All right,
he's the one who fucking loved it.
Credit.
He's the one who compared him to Russell Wilson, or at least that's what I'll tell you. But it's just, look, it worked out. They're Super Bowl champions, and people want to act like, and I'm the first guy in fucking town that said Howie Roseman was a top 5 GM when everybody was shitting on him.
That's true.
And he is a top 5 GM, and he's phenomenal at his fucking job. What he didn't do is make every right decision at every point.
Well, nobody does. I mean, really,
but now you want to win the argument, so you want to move the fucking goalposts.
I'm not interested in winning the argument. I think there deserves to be credit for drafting Jalen Hurts in the second round after paying a quarterback a max fucking contract. I don't give a shit what the plan was.
You deserve credit for drafting Jordan Mailata in the 7th fucking round. Well, I mean, yeah, credit. obviously. And by the way, he doesn't deserve. I'll also defend him for the Jalen Reagor pick. I defended him because that was the coaching staff and how we learned from that, by the way. And he said, you know what? If I'm going to get the shit for these picks, I'm going to make sure I take the guy I want. And at least if it doesn't work, I can own it. So I defend him for stuff like that. And everybody wants to shit on him for that. It goes both ways. Nobody's going to be 100% on draft picks, number one. It's absurd. Number two, to act like any third day pick or act like it's all of a sudden turns into a star or turns into a Hall of Famer. I got to cover John Randall earlier in my career. He was a 12th round pick. People don't even know he wasn't a 12th round pick. Excuse me. He's undrafted when it was a 12 round draft. And, you know, people want to take credit for him deserving, turning into a Hall of Fame player. Of course, but it's not the fucking plan. That's all I'm saying. Right, not the fucking plan.
I agree. I agree to that. All right. Good stuff. We got one more super chat read, and then we'll get to BLJ. James Carver says, I love offseason J-Mac. It's not just Friday. Say something crazy, and J-Mac's going nuclear. He doesn't care who it's directed at. I sure as shit get tons of it, but I love J-Mac and Z in the offseason. Well done, James Carver. Thank you, brother. We appreciate it. We do have a lot of fun on the offseason. There's no doubt about it here. Let's get to BLG joining us now on Birds 365. BLJ, welcome into the Thunderdome, man. We got some heat going on in here. How
Hey, you guys
doing,
don't need me.
Wisconsin?
You're electric right now, both of you.